Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host, Rashid, and I'd like to thank you for joining me live on another edition of the most powerful platform for truth, bar none, anywhere on YouTube. We are the most banned, the most censored, and the most tampered with show, period, on YouTube. Before we get into our show today, let me start by saying thank you for giving us the greatest commodity that you could give us, which is your time. We often and always will say that time is the greatest commodity that you could have because once it is given, you cannot replenish that resource. So you have to make sure that you give your time and get an equal or greater payoff from the time that you have allotted to others. Okay, so let's get into this. I was thinking Rashid would already be here, but he's not here. Before we get into the platform, I have to speak directly to YouTube before we go any further. So please do not uh, leave. Please do not um, pause your sets or whatever. YouTube, you have been taking subscribers every single day. We've been monitoring this. Every time we get close to adding another 100 within a day or a day and a half, we're back down. Then you'll let it build up, then you'll take it back down. That's not right. You know that's not right. You've been doing that to this platform ever since we've started, and you've been artificially suppressing the counts, the views, the likes, in our live audience. You've been doing that since this show's inception. It's not right. You know it's not right, and you know there's an old street saying that God does not like ugly, and you have been acting very ugly, especially since you have a monopoly on things. But there are other platforms which are now sprouting up, which are now giving a fairer share to platforms like mine, channels like mine. You better stop it before you wind up losing the majority of your base, the majority of your viewers, because people are fed up with it. And that's just real. Now, after I vent, let's just go into the news. Let's just see what's really going on. And I'm surprised. I don't know why Rashid is not here because he's really the one that asked for the show to be today. But anyway, while we haven't had a live for a while, I was sick. I was under the weather, as you heard on the last two shows. I was struggling with my voice. It was more than my voice. I mean, I was struggling. I really had a hard time out. So but I'm recuperating. I'm feeling better, and I'm thanking everyone for joining us and those who will join us later. And YouTube, please allow the show to go without a hitch. StreamYard, please allow the show to go without a hitch, okay? Because there's a lot in the news and a lot that we should address now. As we look, and we have a lot of clips we're going to try to play too. As we look to see what's going on in the news and how this relates to America, how it relates to you, your pockets, your family livelihood, and the situation. Yes, we're going to address Ukraine. Yes, we're going to address Russia. We're going to address America. But there's so many other issues out there that get sidelined that were already pushed back to page 6 in the so-called quote unquote newspaper. But we're going to address a few of those. But I also want to ask you all, and I see the chat, and I'll go to the chat in just a second. I often want to ask you all, in the midst of America and her wars globally, why isn't she paying attention to her infrastructure at home? She has 40 to 60,000 bridges and roads that need immediate, not sometime down the line, but immediate repair right now. Some train and railing that needs repair right now, as you can see with the constant derailment of trains. Those in power have the highest contempt for the citizenry because they feel that nothing else matters but their desires and what's in their mind. I want you to think about this for a second. These people strategically ascend to power to push and promote an agenda that they have had in their head and their heart for years, and some of them since their inception. Victoria Nuland comes to mind. Her husband Kagan comes to mind. Wolfowitz comes to mind, and all of these other people. from the New American Century and all of these other so-called quote unquote think tanks. What's the one Newland founded? The Center for War, the study for war and something she founded. And these people constantly get more people indoctrinated into this thought. And they will, without regards to the national security of the nation, or without regards to the livelihood of the people, without regards to the future of these people, they will use all of the resources at the disposal of a nation to try to carry out a plan that is detrimental to the people of that said nation and the nation that has the bullseye on them and the people of that nation that has the bullseye on them. This is utter lunacy. They will use every instrument and every organ at their disposal to get public opinion on their side, and they'll continue to repeat the thing, and the media will go along with it because they strategically put people in place to do this. They have it in the alternative media, so-called alternative media, and they continue to do this. And all while at home, America's falling apart. Now I want to go to something real quick because it's very telling. Okay, let's go to something real quick. Right here. Let's go to this one real quick. Excuse me. On the economic collapse blog, it reads like this. And let me go to it real quick. Here we are right here. Uh-oh. Boom, 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 boom. Here we are. The article is titled "Countless Americans Plunge into Despair as Hunger Spreads Like Wildfire Across America." Now, I want to stop there for a minute because I want to put something on your mind. If you go to any reports on the UK, you will see that hunger is exploding. Inflation is exploding across the UK. Why is this important, and how is this connected to the situation that America is facing? And if you go to the alternative media, and even in some of the so-called mainstream media, you'll see that inflation is higher in the EU. You'll see that people are protesting and they're complaining and they're upset about the value of their currency and how it is taking more to buy less. You see that all around the world, but it's specifically and especially in the Western world. Now, I said that to go back to this article, okay? Because I want to put that on your mind as we read this article and go along with this article, okay? So give me a second. Oh man, this YouTube, please don't start this right now. Hold on. See. All right, here we are. YouTube is playing with the StreamYard is playing with the dashboard. I'm sorry. All right, here we are. It reads like this. We haven't seen anything like this in a long time. A couple of factors are combining to push millions of America into a state of food insecurity. Now stop right there. Remember on one of our shows we did, I think it was a few weeks ago, about the food insecurity in America and around the globe, and how this war of choice and this war of aggression and this war to maintain dollar hegemony and U.S. position globally is backfiring and it is causing the shortages in fuel, in fertilizer, right? And all of the key and critical things that is needed in farming, not just in America, but around the globe, right? See the ramifications of the Kagan policy, the ramification of the Newland policies, the Blinken policies, because they're corrupt to the core and they have an inherent hatred for Russia. They are ready to push the entire world off a cliff just to settle scores that their family may have had with Russia decades and even a century or so ago. the insanity and the lunacy of the leadership. And all actions have an equal or greater reaction according to science. Newland can't nullify that law. Kagan can't nullify that law. Joe Biden can't nullify that law. That is an inherent law in the base of the creation of the universe. Right? Okay. So let's go further. It says, first of all, food prices have been rising aggressively throughout the past year. And so our money does not go nearly as far as it once did. What is that called? That's called inflation. And what is inflation? Inflation is a hidden tax on the poor because it eats away at the purchasing power of the currency that you have to buy goods. So what once took $2 to buy now takes $4. And when you use that $4, you get half as much. So you constantly being taxed through their policies. You don't know that these are taxes. They don't tell you that these are taxes. They blame everything on Putin. The food went up. It's Putin's fault. My wife slapped me. That's Putin's fault. She's suffering from the effects of what Putin has done. The insanity of these people. My child got a C in school. That's Putin's fault. They don't put the blame where the blame goes. They just put the blame on a convenient person or thing or event so that it doesn't go where it should fall on them. The educational system is in disrepair. I continue to tell you this. They can fund wars. They can fund military endeavors. They can fund projects to try to come up with new weapons, new artillery, new manufacturing plants to manufacture these ships, tanks, weapons, warplanes, and bombs. But teachers are making $35,000 and $45,000 a year. These are the stewards of the lives of future leaders, scientists, educators, astronauts, engineers. These people are being defunded in the schools. And we know that education is what civilizes people. And when you don't have the right education or the proper education, you are considered a savage. Look at Kagan, look at Newland, even in these high positions, they are savage. And we can tell that they are savages because of the policies that they're enacting that is supposed to be representative of the people who they're supposed to represent. Only a savage would ravage a nation without second thought. Only a savage would lie to the people and continue to lie to the people to put across insane policies on the nation and the world abroad. This shows you the level of degradation in society. It shows you the level of degradation of the educational system, the political system, the justice system. And it only continues to morph. It morphs into something much worse. But this is what we're going through as we look at the fall of America. Let's be honest. Let's not pussyfoot around this. Let's not beat around the bush. We are living in the fall of the American empire and what looks to be the fall and decline of the American Republic and the Western world. This is why they're lashing out and their policies are becoming unhinged from reality. And they're blaming everybody but themselves. This is what's going on. But let's go further. See how all of this is connecting to the food prices and the educational system. Again, it is the proper education which civilizes us. Now, before I go back to this, something just came to my mind. Let's look at the inner city, and the violence that is going on in there. Okay? And the disregard for life. Where did they get that from? They are only mirroring back what the government sees. It's a trickle-down effect. They are mirroring back what they see the government and those in power do. When America can't have her way, what does she do? She goes over there and takes things. She robs people. She kills people. Hell, she is robbing Yemen right now. She's robbing Syria right now while talking about the territorial integrity of Ukraine. She's trying to destabilize the Horn of Africa right now because she's mad and throwing a fit, a hissy fit, that Russia and China are making friends over in Africa. Just the other day, she was talking about Iran is in Africa making deals to try to colonize. The colonizer blaming somebody else for colonialism. Do you understand? So when you look at the inner city, where does the guns come from? Well, it comes from the manufacturers. Are there any urban city gun manufacturers in America? No. No. Where does the drugs come from? America has been fighting a war on drugs for 40, 50 years, right? And her war is in the urban city. It's not at the borders to prevent them from coming in. Now she can use satellite intelligence to look at the battlefield in Ukraine and pinpoint where Russia's weaponry is, Russia's warplanes are. But she can't use that same technology to pinpoint where trucks of cocaine are entering into the border. The degradation of society. They have put priorities, their priorities are wrong, and they put them in the wrong place. There are not one person in urban America owns submarines. Not one of them are in control of the borders of America. Not one of them have a satellite. Not one of them owns cargo planes or trains. But yet the urban America continues to be flooded with drugs and guns, and yet they manufacture none of it. That is no coincidence. It is to destabilize certain portions of the society, dumb down, and present them as uncivilized, and they must be handled by the government. And how do I know that? Just look at the playbook. Look at what happened in Iraq. Look at what happened in Colombia when they overthrew the government, or Honduras, or Peru, or Bolivia, or Libya, or Ukraine. The playbook is right there, right? So we have to be honest. A lot of people don't like to address these issues, but they're so interconnected, and you can talk about the fall of Bakhmut all you want to. You can talk about the military face-off of Russia and America, or Russia and NATO. But if you don't connect the underlying issues, there's something missing to connect it all to give you the full picture. And what we're looking at is an unraveling of American power globally and American society domestically. See, with their mind, they believe, well, they can, for the most unlearned in urban America, they can kill birds, more than one bird with one stone. I can flood your community with drugs. I can flood your community with guns. I can turn this block against that block. Then I can benefit because I can take the money that I seized in the drug bust, invest it in my military, in my police forces. I can recycle this over and over again and keep these people off balance while profiting to wage wars over there. They're doing it over there to here, and they're doing it here to over there. It's rinse, wash, and repeat. And while they're doing this, the society itself is suffering enormous damage because there's the breakup of families. There's the destruction of homes and lives. There's no focus on education and prospering in the future in the correct way. And this is damaging the American Republic because you're dumbing down people who would be beneficial to the future of the nation. They're doing that over there, right? They're doing it over there. They, even in the midst of an economic collapse, the dollar decline, right? Rising poles of power. America continues to alienate the very people who she wants to buy her debt. I'll sanction you. I'll do this. I'll do that. If you don't do this, I'll do that. Follow what I say, not what I do. Is that not right? Domestically, you see it. Internationally, you see it. It's a mirror me back perpetual motion. Let's go further in this. All right. It says, first of all, food prices have been rising aggressively throughout the past year. And so our money does not go nearly as far as it once did. Meanwhile, food stamp benefits are being slashed. See, but they can find money for war. They can find money for military bases. They can find money to engage in covert operations of destabilization, color revolution, overthrow, and assassination of government officials around the world and governments around the world. Priorities, misplaced priorities. So let's go further. The federal government had greatly enhanced food stamp benefits for many Americans during the pandemic. But now that emergency program is coming to an end. So what this means is that many Americans are going to have very little money to spend on food at a time when economic conditions are starting to get really rough. The Washington Post recently sent a reporter named Tim Craig to Kentucky, and he discovered that poor people are waiting in a mile-long line just to get some free food. A mile long. This is America, the wealthiest country in the world. Isn't that what they say? The most prosperous nation on the planet. But in good old America, in every state, we see this. There's homelessness everywhere, right? Violence everywhere. There's no respect of life or the sanctity of life or the sanctity and security of family. And then they try to force feed you this mess about other genders and all of this foolishness. Do you not see that all of this is a sign of a declining and falling power? And if you don't agree with this, in the eyes of society, the media, and the government, you're out of touch. You want to keep it like this. A man marries a woman, vice versa. And I'm not, listen, for those of you who may not be, I'm not against you. I just don't get it, your lifestyle. You understand? And I don't force feed mine down your throat, so you shouldn't force feed yours down mine. Because I hear a lot of people, so-called of other genders, always talking about stuff like this. But what they don't talk about is they're always in your face with their sexuality. They're always in your face, telling you what you should be thinking, believing, doing, and trying to do. And they disregard centuries and centuries and centuries of tradition, and you're out of touch. And the media goes with this because there's an agenda behind this. They want to weaken the foundations of God. There's an agenda behind this. I won't accept it. I won't be forced into this. None of that. Let's go further. And I know YouTube may suspend me, but I didn't mention any people. I just said a few things. Okay, let's go further. It says, man, let's see if the screen is going to let me go. Okay, it says, as he claimed the first spot in a mile-long line for free food in the Appalachian foothills, Danny Blair vividly recalled receiving the letter announcing that his pandemic-era benefit to help buy groceries was about to be slashed. Kentucky lawmakers have voted to end the state's health emergency last spring, by default cutting food stamp benefits created to help vulnerable Americans like Blair weather the worst of COVID-19. Instead of a $200 a month, he would just get $30. Now stop right there. Why is it that when Americans and people here need help, the government always has to debate on it? always, and they're willing to cut it, they or not pass this or not, but let them go before the Armed Services Committee. Not only can they find $800 billion for the War Department, they will find more, 10 billion, 20 billion, 50 billion, 100 billion, 80 billion, 180 billion more in supplemental spending for the war machine. That's a problem. That's a problem. When you are more concerned about waging war around the world, your interests around the world, but you don't have interests right here in America with the citizenry of America. You make that make sense. Your interest, you got interest in Syria. You have interest in South America. You have interest, so you say, in Africa and in Asia. You have an interest in dividing China and its province, Taiwan. But you have little to no interest in the welfare, the security, and the well-being of the people in America. These are misplaced priorities. Again, there's a very old saying that would be well used if it was heeded. Charity starts at home, then it spreads abroad. You cannot secure security interests 8,000 miles away from your shore and neglect the security situation here at home. How in the hell can that work? Common sense tells us that that wouldn't work. Just look at your block for a second. Say, for instance, you live in a certain neighborhood, say a cookie cutter neighborhood, okay? And you live in a subdivision. And in the subdivision, it was getting harder and harder to pay bills and things were happening in the subdivision. But at every turn, you and your children were in a subdivision 6 states over trying to tell them what to do. Things are getting rough in that subdivision. Don't you know your house becomes a target? Don't you know the people that you left in that house becomes a target? Why? Because you have invested your time, your thoughts, your efforts, your money into trying to secure something for the 6 states over. And you have left your underbelly, your house, your home, your livelihood open. Common sense. And you don't have to be a strategist. You don't have to be an analyst. You don't have to be a very schooled in geopolitics to understand this. This is basic common sense, which is not so common in today's political environment, geopolitical environment, or economic environment. So let's go a little further. I see Rashid in the booth. I just looked down. I'll bring you in a second, Rashid. Let me finish this thought. Excuse me. So he goes further and he says, Blair actually gets up at 4 a.m. in the morning so that he can be the first in line for these handouts. On the Friday that the reporter from the Washington Post interviewed him, he ended up standing in that line for 9 hours. I couldn't imagine waiting in line for that long, but Blair feels like this is what he and his wife must do in order to survive. So you relegate the people within your borders to actions like this. And yet you're talking about Ukraine is in your national interest, and you can find another 4 billion, 5 billion, 10 billions to wage an unjust war that you provoked and that you are maintaining so that you can try to weaken Russia for your sadistic geopolitical ambitions so that you cannot have a rival on the stage. I thought you said that it was free competition, but you are trying to suppress China, Iran, Venezuela, Russia, Syria. You're trying to suppress anyone that you may deem a rival to your world order. All the while, people at home are suffering untold sorrows. And you're saying that doing that is for the national interest. Well, what about within your borders and the people, the violence, the hunger, the unemployment, the hopelessness of the people within your own borders. What about them? These are the people that you say you represent. How can you secure interests 8,000 miles away when you have left your interests within your own belly, within your own border, exposed? You make that make sense. You make it make sense. I'm gonna bring Rashid in. I know he want to cook on this, and I know he has something to say about this. Rashid is not yard. How's it going?
It's going great, brother. And yourself? You there?
Yeah, I'm.
Can you hear me?
I was talking about. I hope you heard some of the stuff I was just saying. What's your take on that situation?
Once again, as we were saying, he ain't concerned about the little guy. He concerned with his hegemony around the world. That's what he's concerned about. He sees himself losing it, and he's ready to do anything to keep it. China and Russia are going against it, and the average person can't see that if he does not keep China and Russia and Iran and the rest of them down, and they form this union that they are trying to do, then your dollar is worthless in your back pocket or in your purse.
Yeah.
It's worthless. If he can't understand that, if the people can't see that, he owes everybody all over the planet. And then pretty soon he just gonna say, well, he got what he doing with Russia, make up some reason to steal all of Russia's money. and that's what he gonna do. Well, you owe China $2 trillion. Well, China did something, and I'm just keeping all that money. The people around the world are waking up to this stuff, and they rejected it. If you can steal Russia's money, then you can steal mine.
Oh,
that's the reason why he's doing what he's doing.
Oh man, check this out. I knew this was happening. This is live on the air. So I want to bring this up right now because we may not be able to stream after today. We were going to do 5. This just so happened I'm going into the YouTube studio. I want to, so that people can see this. Let me see if I can bring it around here. Oh man, cords. Hold on one second. Hold on one second, everybody. Give me a second to. All right, here we are. Now. Oh, what did I just do? What did I just? Hold on. Let me move this out of the way. I want you to see. We have been given a strike while on the air. A video has been taken down while on the air. While on the air. So I want all to see that. I just so happened to go to the studio thing, and we've been given a strike. And it said someone asked them to take down the video. Listen to me good. We let anyone use our content. Everyone use our content. And we've seen the content being used on other platforms. We never, ever complain because in journalism and so-called, and I want you to understand something. These are supposed to be alternative media, right? Alternative media. Now, they can use the mainstream media stuff, right? When they're doing their mainstream media, they can use their mainstream media stuff and show you clips and articles and all of this stuff from the mainstream media. But when you use a clip or part of something that they say, they go to the YouTube people and get a video taken down on a strike against you. This is done purposely. And I'm gonna tell you why they just did that in just a second, okay? They took this just happened while we're on the air. Now it didn't happen yesterday. It didn't happen the day before yesterday. It happened while we're on the air, as you can see. Now, you are supposed to have something that is called fair use exemption if you are a if you're reporting on media, or if you feel that someone has done something that is, or have given an interview that is so important that other people are to use it. Now, before we used anything, we go to YouTube and we ask them, "Is this okay?" We'll use the audio. We won't use the video. We'll use the audio. All right, because we know some people have given us permission to use certain things, and certain people may get mad. So the people that may get mad, we try to use the audio. This is fair use because something that they said is so important that we deem that you have to listen to this. But these people are getting caught up. This is what I'm telling you. This is how you know that these people are milking you. This is what I'm telling you. All of these so-called websites or alternative media sites, they're making a killing off you with 10,000. When you was looking at them and they have 5,000, 10,000 views live. They are now making money. They tell you, they read stuff from the news. They quote stuff that they've read in the news. And then if you quote what they said, they want you taken down. That's crazy right now. I'm going to tell you why they just gave us that. We were about to be monetized. They keep giving us a strike every time it's time to be monetized. Right? Every time. They'll give us 2 strikes. One strike is removed. They'll wait. You won't get another strike for a minute. And then a week or so before you get monetized, YouTube usually comes back with another strike. This is what they've done. This is strategic. Again, strategic. So I'm telling you who are listening, and shout out to England because I just saw in there from Yorkshire, greetings. Thank you for joining us on the chat. You have to now question all of these so-called media outlets, these so-called alternative media outlets that have all these platforms on Rockfin, Patreon, YouTube, Odyssey, Twitter, what is it, Rumble, and all of this stuff. Remember, all of this stuff is monetized, or most of it. So they have a monetary interest in doing what they're doing, right? It comes at the same time YouTube has been suppressing the numbers from us, right? As we were talking at the beginning of the show. And while we're on the show, I told you we're the only show that gets strikes or gets suspended while we're live on there. And if I didn't have the other computers up right here, I wouldn't be able to show you. Rashid, what say you about this, man? This is absolutely crazy.
There's a commercial going on. I wonder if you seen it. Well, I think it's Rumble and YouTube. 2 men talking.
Yeah.
And and he hollers strike, and then they say, "I didn't say that. Strike 2.
Yeah.
Strike 3.
Yeah.
That's the way they were. But then again, it's the situation we find ourselves in. Once again, the truth hurts the guilty. We always say that. If it looks like a old saying, if you throw a rock in a crowd of dogs, the only one that hollers is the one that get hit. That's what it is. They see what's taking place and they mad. They used to talk about the Soviet Union as state-run media, but we know where state-run media really is. You say anything against the empire, and they sanction it.
Oh yeah. So it did happen live on the air. It's crazy, right? Live on the air, this happened. So it's not going to stop. Like I say, one monkey don't stop the show. Also, check this out. For those of you who are listening, if we're not broadcasting on YouTube, go to our Rumble page. We'll still broadcast on Rumble. We'll broadcast to Rumble, Twitch, and maybe Twitter or local. So we're trying to get this thing down. We're not, both he and I, we're not tech savvy, but I got a son that is tech savvy. And if we plan to do a show and we're not on here, we will broadcast. So go sign up, go subscribe to our Odyssey. Oh, and Odyssey, we can broadcast Odyssey. Go to our Odyssey page, go to our Rumble page, go to Twitch page also. That'll give us some. Let's see. Roger Yao says, I hunger for the truth. Keep spreading it. Don't give up as we are here for the truth. Thank you. Thank you. And in England, um, he said, English, not British. Still live here, friend. Glad to be here, sir. We're glad to have you here. Thank you so much. But that is what we're going through, and that's what we go through. And if we could not pull it up, I know people would be saying that, man, there's no way this stuff could just happen to them constantly. But you can see, you can go back to some of our old videos where we be talking and we get suspended right on the air. I've never seen that happen on YouTube ever. So we are breaking records. Hey, Rashid, we record breakers. So what say you about the situation? They got us away from our subject. Not really, because that just brought light to the to what I was saying before about the degradation of American society. Do as I say, not as I do. Now you see, as I said that, we see that now trickling down on YouTube. I can use excerpts from these people over here, and I can use excerpts from these media newspapers, and because all of them are just reading the newspaper or listening to the news, and then they give their opinion or their insight on this and that. And then when we do it, we get suspended, and our numbers go down. When they do it, they get 100,000, 200,000 subscribers, and no suspension, no censorship. Why do you think that, Rashid?
What's going on is the same thing. It's like I said, certain people out there pushing the American line or the empire's line, and when you say anything against it, they get upset with it. That's what that is. They once again, as we keep saying, no one riding on the horse will get off and walk. The Western world is riding on the horse of leadership, and they do not want to step down and let somebody else ride. They're not going to do it. And if to think that they're going to do it, you're living in a fantasy world. So he's going to fight all that he can to stay on top. He'll even kill his mother and his brother or sister. I don't care who it is. I must rule.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that is. He has to be on top. He has to be.
So again, we talk about, YouTube is blocking me from entering into the studio. Hold on, everyone. I'm trying to get into the YouTube studio. I was thrown out. Now I'm trying. Maybe they're blocking me. maybe that's one of the perks of being getting a strike or what. Man, this is absolutely insane, man. You know what?
Is it YouTube or StreamYard?
This is YouTube now. This is not StreamYard. This is you. See, this is StreamYard right here. That's YouTube right here, right there. And this is just another computer that's up, doing the, I'm just doing the scrolling over here. So this one for sure is YouTube. I'm in the YouTube studio. I'm trying, put it like this, I'm trying to get in the YouTube studio. I should say that. So I'm watching comments on the StreamYard studio. So we're going through that. Excuse me. Let me see if I can do this real quick. Everybody give us see, this is live on the air. You see what? So I wanted to go to something. All right. Because we were talking about the financial situation in America, and we were talking about the growing poverty, the levels of poverty and insanity in America. And we continue to tell you that as America goes, so does as America's faith is sealed, so is the UK or Britain, or I don't know which one you guys want to be called, Britain or the UK, or if you just want to be. I know there's several countries in the UK, but England. I don't know, because some people get offended if you say England. Some people get offended if you say the UK. Some people get offended if you say Britain. I'm not British. I'm not a UK person, and I'm like, huh? So, but it's the same thing over here when people say that they get offended when you call them something. They say, I'm Texan or I'm this, So it's pretty much the same thing. But I want to go to something to show you how it mirrors back how the empire, because most people think that it's the U.S. empire, but it's the British U.S. empire. They both, that's why in every engagement that America is in, Britain is in. That's why the U.S. stock exchange, the New York Stock Exchange, is tied to the British Stock Exchange. The U.S. Gold Exchange is tied to the London Gold Exchange. The U.S. dollar and the sterling pound are tied together. They're one and the same. Most people, it's hard for them to comprehend this. That's why in every war, regardless of how unjust it is, if Britain is in it, America's in it. If America's in it, Britain is in it. It's the same thing. And so when we look at the dire economic situation that America is facing with lines as long as 1 and 2 miles just to get food, and you have to stand there for 7, 9, and 10, and sometimes 15 hours to get food, yet they can they have readily available appropriation bills to arm Ukraine that is worth the tune of tens of billions of dollars, right? Outside of the normal spending bill. So look what happens here. Hold on one second, Rusty. Look what happens here. Britain is doing the same thing. Now, the people are suffering in Britain. Inflation is going up. The purchasing power of the pound is going down. There's more homeless and poverty growing, just like in America. And look, I say it's a mirror me back situation. The article says UK cost of living crisis. It says crisis. Before we go into the article, let's find out what they're trying to convey to the people. Because it's one thing to say things, but it's another thing to understand the meaning of words. So let's go to the dictionary and find out what the word crisis. Crisis, a tense, difficulty, trouble, or danger. Catastrophe, calamity, cataclysm, emergency, disaster, predicament, critical point, decisive point, turning point, crossroads, critical period. Okay, so now that we have that understanding, and we often know that America is at a tipping point right now, and she's at a critical moment, a critical juncture in the history of the American Republic and the American Empire. We now see that England or the UK or Britain is in the same situation. I wonder why. But let's go further. It says UK cost of living crisis. 1 in 7 Britons skip meals, sit in cold homes as prices soar. Right? This is I'm telling you, for those of you who are listening, when the government does these things, they are showing utter contempt for the citizens. You can find money for war. You can find money to build warships, but you can't find money to put in the pocket of your military people. I'm talking about the people who barely make it, or the people who are on the streets, or the people, your everyday person of that country. This is the highest form of government contempt for the people. It's to spit in your face and tell you that it's rain. But let's go and let's read this a little bit. 1 in 7 people in the UK skip meals and sit in cold homes due to the worsening cost of living crisis, a leading investigation company or Consumer Affairs has warned. According to the latest findings from which Consumers Insight Tracker, an alarming number of British households are going without food and cannot afford their energy bills as rising inflation and high energy costs put pressure on incomes. The findings also suggest that almost 1 in 10 Britons had prioritized meals for other family members above themselves. A 72-year-old citizen from West Suffolk told which that this is crazy. I can't read this. The sentence is actually incomplete. It says a 72-year-old citizen from West Suffolk told which that, which is talking about the company, that the last week of the month meals are missed. If you have no money for a loaf, then there's no lunch. And if there's no milk, then there's no breakfast. And I was watching something, Rashid, and I want you to comment on this in a second. I was watching something yesterday, and all week long there was talking about there was a vegetable and fruit crisis in the UK. Now, with saying that, we often know that, as I told you on this show, that I sent my son and my daughter into the stores. Like we went to 3 different Walmarts. This was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. We went to 2 different Walmarts, and we went to a couple of the local stores. They had no ice cream. They had no milk, and the eggs were the few eggs that they had were out of sight in price. Why aren't people more up in arms with the UK and the US being able to find pounds or pence or dollars and cents for Ukraine, but cannot find the money to support the people at the bottom rung of the ladder?
As I told you before, they're not concerned about the little guy. What I was saying before what I was going to say earlier, when they send this money to Ukraine, they get 100% support from all of the senators, right?
Yes.
They don't vote against it. You don't get no 50-50. You get 100% from the senator, and then maybe 80 or 90% from the House. They're all in league with it. It's just like what you're saying before. With America and England, it's just the Mutt and Jeff thing again. Good guy, bad cop. I'm against you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm for you. But then when you get behind the closed doors, they're all against you. They're not concerned about no little guy. You are part of their society. We don't have to convert you. You already here. We're looking to convert the rest of the people so we can rule. I can have the power to affect your life. That's what he wants. His dollar was king, and if anybody say anything that he don't like, I'll sanction you. Mm-hmm. Now the world is waking up. Well, I don't care nothing about your sanction. I don't want to have nothing to do with you. And that's what the fight is about.
Mm-hmm. To Mr. Clean Ali, thank you for the well wishes, man. I really appreciate that. Yeah. Let's go. I didn't see that at first, and I should have saw that at first, but I was in deep thought, and I was discussing a lot of things that were heavy on my heart. So I should have been said something about it, but I didn't. Again, we had greetings from Yorkshire. Salute to the chat. Let's see. And let me put up a few more. Let's put up another one. Thank you. We do teach the truth, and we're going to continue to. That's why, as you saw, we got a strike live on the air, and we're going to continue to give this truth out to people. You know, and if YouTube blocks us, then we'll go to another platform and we'll continue to spread the truth. As they say on the streets, one monkey don't stop the circus. So if they give us a strike here, if we can't, if you don't see another live show in the next day or two, go over to our other platforms. We'll be doing a live one over there, especially on my brother's day or whatever. We'll do it live at night. If our schedules conflict, we'll come in live at night and do it. So, but we'll give you a heads up on everything. But again, doesn't this what they just did to us live on the air and what they're doing the situation in Ukraine, doesn't this smell of desperation and a sense of collapsing authority, because now they're lashing out at everybody that they think that is against them, everybody that they think that can use it. Now, let me go to something real quick. Let me say this. Now, if, say for instance, if Rashid and I say something and we know that we're the first ones to say it, and we do. I look at a lot of the platforms that have 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 subscribers. They don't say this, but they listen to this show. And then they will take stuff that we've talked about and that and from our viewpoint, and you can look and they'll have opposite views. Go back and look at some of them, and then all of a sudden they'll say, I'm coming around to looking at it like this. That's because they watched this show. And then they'll take that view without saying anything. We know that they took it from us. It doesn't matter as long as it gets out to the people. That's what we're saying. If you're truly about the people and you want the people to benefit from this, you should have no problem with somebody taking that and sharing it with somebody to enlighten them. I was looking at one of the a big platform the other day, and one of the guys he was talking about, he said, I'm coming around to thinking that this is all a show, and that Ukraine really like with Zelensky and Zelensky. Zelensky is the general. Zelensky is the president of Ukraine, and I'm coming around thinking that maybe this it wasn't Zelensky pushing for the troops to stay in Bakhmut, and it wasn't the military trying to push for the removal of the troops. But we've been saying this for the longest. Listen to me good. They won't tell you this, but we've been saying this for the longest. Go back on our track record. There is no way that America installs a government, gives them the arms to fight, trains them, and funds the entire budget of the government of a nation, and that government has the right to say no. If America say pull out of Bakhmut, guess what would happen? They would pull out of Bakhmut. The reason that they haven't pulled out of Bakhmut is because America does not want them to pull out of Bakhmut, because she's positioned herself that she doesn't take the blame. If Ukraine is able, which nobody really believes this, if Ukraine is able to rebuff the Russian move on Bakhmut, America gets the credit because she armed them. And America has special forces on the ground there, contractors. But if they get routed, America saves face because she says, I tried to tell them to pull their troops out of Bakhmut before they got encircled. So what this is a hedge. The empire is hedging themselves against failure because they're failing in everything else, and they're trying to present themselves as the rational thinker. But just weeks ago, they were saying that they would never pull out of Bakhmut and that America would supply them with arms to rebuff the Russian forces. But on this platform, we told you that when America tells you that they're telling a leaders or the leadership of a nation that they fund, train, and arm to do something, and that leadership refuses to do it, that's insanity, because America would get rid of you, replace you, or totally just abandon you. Common sense tells you that. But they don't tell you that they got it from this platform. But all you have to do is check your digital records and see that we were the only ones saying these things. See, because we experience the domestic policies of the empire. And we know that the domestic policies is mirrored back in her international policies. So we can see things a little more clear than most. They explain things from a position of affluence. We struggle to get to a point of affluence. You understand? Rashid, what say you on that matter?
Nobody can tell you how the American mind is other than the people that live in America. We see him, we know him, and we know how he thinks. They have like you said, the American is a blowback effect. We, by being here, know how the pattern things and how they go about stuff. He, like you said, he's when he comes in, only thing he sees is a hammer. If you got a hammer, everything is a nail.
Right.
He want to go and hammer everybody. Now, as far as that Bach move, what about Mariupol? Remember when they first started?
Right.
They would never take it over. That's so far in the rearview mirror, they don't even talk about that no more. Now they're taking over. Yeah, now they're taking over these other deals. It's like somebody sitting around here. A locomotives are going down the line, tracks, and you're gonna stand up there and hold it with your hands to stop it from coming. You can't do it. Russia is gonna move on. There's nowhere in the world they could have stopped the Russian bear. But like I said, what this happened by doing this is awoken Russia that I shouldn't be taking second fiddle to you because you're weak.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're weak. Why should I sit up here and let you dictate to me? Why should I sit up here and let you tell me what to do? Your money is no better than my money. And that's what they realize. Really, the American money is nothing. It's backed by, we keep saying that, backed by nothing. So why should I live there, hold it as the standard that everybody should trade in when its value is nothing? And then other people are waking up to this. As we said before, it's the 3-guard model, right? The shell game. It's the con. The biggest con men on the planet that tell you to take my money over your money. Well, what makes your money better than my money? I got gold, I got oil, I got resources, I got cobalt, I got aluminum. Well, what do you got? I ain't got nothing. But all I got is my credit, which is what? Nothing. I owe more money than everybody on the planet.
In the history of the world.
That's right. And everybody else is seeing this and getting off of it. That's the reason why you have these conflicts. Now, like you said, we have in conflict with Russia. Now they want to go over to China. He want to go over to Iran. Keep everybody. It's the shell gun. He got to keep everybody off. Keep everybody not secure. They got to be. Yeah, they got to keep them off balance because when when they get together and realize and say, it's like the emperor with no clothes. Well, the emperor ain't got no. As long as the emperor thought everybody was buffalo, he was strutting. After he realized that everybody seen the game was up, then he looked around and ran into the building.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's happening with America. She's been strutting all along. I'll do this, and I've got this, and when you really look at it, it's like the Wizard of Oz. Nobody behind the curtain. There's a little bitty guy behind the curtain, which nobody should have been afraid of.
And I was thinking as you were talking about the situation with the nations now looking at America like, man, you weak, like Russia looking at America. See, America's exposed to underbelly. And I was thinking about, I was looking at this thing on the Joe Rogan Experience, right? And this guy, he constantly comes on that show. And he talks in a soft voice, and he often try to tell, he comes as this person of reason. And I'm looking at this man, I'm saying now, why won't Joe throw this dude some hard ball questions? Why won't he go at this guy? Why is he just letting him say anything? And then just is like, oh, really? Like he's surprised, like these things are revelations to him. And I'm like, man, this guy is, you can tell this guy's a CIA plan. And on one of the shows, he was talking about Russia knows that if it goes head to head with NATO, that it would lose. So it would have to, the reason America, and I'm paraphrasing, the reason America and NATO have to watch Russia, because if America and NATO enters the war, Russia knows that it's left with only one option, because NATO would quickly defeat Russia with this antiquated weapons and this, and so it would have to go nuclear. So this thing could go and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, okay, first of all, Joe Rogan is supposed to know more than this. You got the largest podcast in the world, and common sense that you are supposed to know more than this, and you're supposed to throw this guy, regardless if you know this guy. You don't supposed to give him soft ball questions. You're supposed to give him hard ball questions, and then you're supposed to follow up your questions with more evidence of your position. You don't supposed to just let it ride. So since he couldn't follow up the guy's question, we're gonna do it. So listen, the guy talked about Russia would lose a war if any conflict starts between NATO and Russia. Well, first of all, we're watching it right there in Ukraine. So we know that that's not the truth. We're watching it in real time right there. And Russia is shellacking. Listen, they're not just beating Ukraine. And they, as Putin said, they haven't even started yet. They're not just beating Ukraine. They're not just beating the UK. They're not just beating the US. They're beating the entire Western world. They're beating them economically, they're beating them politically, and they're beating them militarily on a scale that is unprecedented. So listen, this is an article. Joe, all you had to do was Google this, bro. This is an article, and I'm going to tell you, let me go back for a minute before I read the article. I'm going to tell you what you put in. So the next time the guy comes on and you want to throw him these little softball questions, Joe, just Google this. NATO would lose war in Europe to Russia in 7. You don't even have to put nothing else in there, but you can add in 72 hours. Okay. Now, when you do that, multiple sources are going to come. None of these are Eastern sources. All of these are Western sources. And I'm going to name some of the sources so that because if you use the Eastern source, they'll say, oh, that's biased. So we're going to use nothing but Western sources. Okay. Just put that in there. And things from Europa.eu will come up. Something from government.info would come up. Something from the New York Times will come up. The Stimson Center will come up. Forbes will come up. The UK's paper, The Independent, will come up. The Center for Strategic and International Studies will come up. Business Insider will come up. And Foreign Policy Guide will come up. And more. But I'm just telling you some of the things that most people are aware of. Those things. I just ran down a few things. And this is let's just pick the first one on the list. Okay. And this is what it has to say about Russia's war, if a war should break out with NATO in Europe, and the outcome that NATO, not that guy that was on there talking soft to you, but giving you a whole bunch of crap. This is what NATO and the US came to the conclusion of, according to these outlets. Okay. So, oh man, I tell you what, this thing says it's going to power down in a second. Let me read this, and then I'm going to turn the show over to you and try to see if I can put a battery pack on this computer. Okay. But I got to get this point off. The title is, if Russia starts a war in the Baltics, NATO would lose quickly. It didn't just say NATO would lose. It said NATO would lose quickly. Okay. War games. So the United States, the UK, and all of NATO have done these scenarios over and over and over and over again. And it says war games show NATO's eastern flank is vulnerable. To deter, quote unquote, Moscow, the United States will need for heavy armor on a large scale, a new study says. But now let's go right there. Let's stop right there. This is what the foreign policy guy says. But according to the National Security Council of the United States, the former war secretary of the United States and the president at the time, at some of these writings, Obama and Trump, they were briefed that Russia has escalatory dominance across the whole of Europe, right? So no matter what America or NATO could bring to bear, Russia could outdo it and up it. According to the intelligence communities, and according to the military, and according to the two former heads of states who preceded Joe Biden when he was a vice president. So Joe Biden understands this, okay? I don't care about the bluster that they give you in front. We're going to read what they're saying behind closed doors, okay? And it says, in this article, now I want you to understand something, and I know I don't have much time before this thing shuts down, but it says, this article was written February 3rd, 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, right? That is 7 years ago when Russia did not even have the weaponry that it has today. It shut down. The thing shuts down. It shut down. Rashid, I'm gonna let you comment on it. I'm gonna black my screen for a minute. I'll let you talk, and then I'll be right back in. I'm gonna try to see if I can put a battery pack on this to pull this back up. Everybody, stay where you are. Listen to Rashid. I'm not going anywhere. I'm just trying to get this thing going. Okay. I appreciate your patience. Let's try to do it. Go ahead, Rashid.
Why you sit up there and listen to them, and they tell you that they don't have arms to fight Russia. They depleting all of the ammunition out. Russia has they have ammunition to fight this war, but UK, NATO, and all of them, they say they can't give Ukraine any more ammunition because they don't have any more. So what is this guy talking about? It sounds to me like one of these talking heads. You listen to him. Everybody listen to him on television. Russia is no, they can't win. Russia can't do this. Russia can't do that. When Russia had, before this started, Russia didn't amp up its military. Didn't amp up its military people. They didn't sit around and have a few people. What they have now, they say they can go to 2 million people they can have, he can put in the army. Mm-hmm. Ukraine ain't got nobody to put more in it. The Ukrainian troops just about all are gone, and these are mercenaries, like you say, coming from other parts of the country, of Europe. But what's happening is that Russia is grinding down all of these troops. Russia have new ammunition. Russia is not asking for it. Since they don't have any more to send to the battlefield, Russia must be getting it from Iran, North Korea, China. Yeah. Can you imagine that?
Yeah,
I can't give my friend a slingshot, but you can arm up my enemy with everything that they ask for, and then I'm the bad guy.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to address you guys in the chat in a second. I'm sorry. I'll address you in just a second. Go ahead, Rashid.
It's the same old thing with that entity over in the Middle East. Yeah. You can give them everything but the kitchen sink, but if somebody give Iran a one rock, look, he's giving him a rock, and then you better or either they can have 10,000 nuclear weapons, and if Iran get one, we're ready to bomb them into the Stone Age. Yeah, excuse me, Mr. Empire, how many nuclear weapons do you have? Oh, I only have 100,000 of them. But if Iran get one, we're gonna kill everybody over there. See, what it is they cannot allow you to be on the same footing as they are. I can't allow you to get the same weapons that I have.
I can't bully you.
That's right. I can't tell you what to do. So that's what the whole thing of it is. He's losing, and nobody fears him anymore.
Yeah,
that's what he did. He ruled the planet through fear.
And I'm going to read this article. I'm going to address first. I'm going to address the stream real quick. Let me go to No Way Out. I apologize for you missing the stream, missing the starting point, but a lot of times we try to do it at around in between 11:30 and 11:40 a.m. in the morning. Sometimes we'll do it in the evening, but it's according to how YouTube and StreamYard is, doing us. Just like we just showed live on the air about 20 minutes ago when we were doing the stream, we got a strike while we were streaming. So, it's funny money, but we try to do this. You didn't see us last week because I was fighting a sickness, and so we're back on the air. Hopefully we can still stream. But listen, if you don't see us on YouTube tomorrow, go to the following day, go to Rumble or Odyssey and join us over there, because we may be suspended because they gave us a strike. And when they give you a strike, sometimes they won't allow you to stream. So I just wanted to, I see your message down there. I didn't highlight it, but I see your message because I'm doing a whole bunch of things, and I want to address you personally, let you know that your thoughts and your perspective matters to the show. All of your thoughts and perspectives matters to the show. Okay. Now let's go back to this article here. All right. The article is titled, "If Russia started a war in the Baltics, NATO would lose quickly." Now remember, this started last year. All right. Russia has 5 different hypersonic weapons. They have a weapon, underwater submersible weapon that could devastate the entire coast, like inland, upwards of what, 100, 200 miles of a coast. The whole coast up and down, and roughly 100, 200 miles inland. This tsunami making weapon that they have. They have the most advanced warplanes. They have the most advanced tanks. They have the most advanced and integrated air defense system on the planet. We know that because we've talked to people who are familiar with this stuff. Okay, so now I said that before I read this because I want you to understand that this article was written 7 years ago, before the West even knew that Russia had these new capabilities that they don't have. Okay, so when we read this, we have to put it in the mind that now we are realizing that the Armada tank that Russia has outguns anything that the West has. The Su-35 hands down beats the F-35. They don't even have to put the Pakfa or the T-50 stealth plane out. The Su-35 outguns all of that. The Panzer, the bulk systems, the S-300, S-350, S-400, S-500, S-550, S-600s. Air defense systems are decades ahead of any analog in the West. Any analog.
What did Scott Ritter say? If anything come over here, they ain't got no S nothing. We just done for.
But Russia has a integrated air defense system so that if you use a first strike against them, they can blunt the majority of your strike, but they can strike you with a strike and you have nothing to rebuff it. So what I'm telling you is that we're looking at the minds of lunatics who are trying to push this war. Okay, let's go into this article a little bit. Since we have the layout of it 7 years ago, before Russia unveiled any of these technological advances that they have, the cruise missiles, the hypersonic missiles, all of this stuff. Okay, what America didn't even think Russia had the capability to do these things. Okay, 7 years ago. Now, with that in mind, it says war games show NATO's eastern flank is vulnerable to deter Moscow, as if Moscow is moving to Mexico's border or to Canada's border. So they say to deter, when it's America and NATO that should be deterred as they continue to gobble up nation after nation into their organization by illegal bribe or the overthrow of governments or color revolutions to install their patsies to change the course of policy of those nations and to make them hostile towards Russia in the East. But let's go further. It says, if Russian tanks and troops rolled into the Baltics tomorrow, outgunned and outnumbered NATO forces would be overrun in under 3 days. Under 3 days. I want you to understand something. Even though Foreign Policy Magazine is writing this, they got it from the Pentagon. They got it from the intelligence services. So they're not saying this, just making this stuff up. Okay? So listen, it goes further and says this. That's the sobering conclusion of war games carried out by a think tank with the American military officers and civilian officials. Okay? Now, let's go to something real quick before we read the rest of this. We want our audience to be the most informed audience out there. Okay? So, what we do is give you and understanding of what they are trying to convey. Okay. So according to the dictionary, the word sobering, Sobering, is an adjective. It means creating a more serious, sensible, or solemn mood. So when this article comes out, what it did, it was supposed to wake them up from their from them being inebriated off of imperialism and exceptionalism, right? So that's what sobering means. It once they came to the reality that their military capabilities were dwarfed by Russia's in Europe, they should not have even you know, push the envelope with the Ukraine business. But again, they have no pause, neutral, or reverse gears. They can only go forward. And I don't care how thick this reinforced concrete wall is, America and NATO continues to bam its head against it, saying that eventually, over time, if it's 2,000 years from now, I'm going to bam my head and put a hole in it. This is what they're doing. Rashid, before I
They've
go
been
to the article, go ahead.
they've been they've been beating up on little bitty countries.
Yeah.
And once you start bullying and slapping people around and stuff, you begin to think that you are the greatest thing that there is. You can do it to everybody. He can slap down and start trouble with everybody around the world. Now he's coming up against somebody who can punch back. It's like you're a heavyweight, right? And you beating up on all them lightweights around, and then when the fight comes, you see somebody just as big and as bad as you standing right in front of you. Then it gives you a pause to think, well, I can't do what I did to the little bitty guy. This guy might knock me on my behind.
But if you so inebriated in what you think you can do, you ignore rational advice, which America is doing, and thinking that you can do things that even your policy advisors told you, hey, look, we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't do that because that can lead to this, this, and this.
Remember what John McCain used to always say about Russia? It is a gas station.
Yeah.
Run around. It ain't nothing. And then even Barack Obama and all the rest of them holler about how Russia ain't got no military. They ain't worth anything. So it makes him think that his politicians, people got to understand it's the difference between a military man and some trained liar or politician who's up there to get votes. He thinks that all of what he's saying is actually real. And if he goes up against Russia, he's going to get his butt spanked. Russia is really not trying to destroy Ukraine like Scott Ritter said. If Russia was at war with Ukraine, she would take out the general. She would take out Zelensky. She would even the railroads. The rail station would all be bombed. Like America, when she went in there, Fallujah in there, she bombed up anything that moved. She shot a missile at.
And the buildings.
That's right. Russia not doing that. You got to understand that Russia they have the same capability. They could have did that with Ukraine. They could go on and flatten the city like America did. But Russia is not at war with Ukraine per se. They really don't want you fighting this war, but they really don't want to because they consider the Ukrainians really Russian.
They're brothers. Yeah. So let's go a little bit further into this. And then I'm going to, while we're talking and playing clips, I'm going to highlight No Way Out. He wanted me to put links in the chat and I'll be able to do it. I can't do it at this moment. I'll do it though. I see the response up there. But it says the games, GAMES. So these are multiple scenarios, not one, but multiple. The games, which is plural, findings are unambiguous. All right? That's what they're telling you. So let's see. Hold on one second, everybody. Uh-oh. What is going on here?
Anyway, what they
hold on one
fight
second,
these
Rashid.
war games.
Hold on one second, Rashid. Hold on. All right, hold on one second. Unambiguous. It says not open to more than one interpretation. Not open to more than one interpretation. So when they say that the findings are unambiguous, meaning that they are direct to the point that America and NATO would win. There's no other conclusion that you can come to, that America and NATO would not win in a war against Russia. This is what the findings of these officers and civilians came to the conclusion of. Now listen what it says. As currently postured, NATO cannot successfully defend the territory of most of its exposed members, said a report by the RAND Corporation. Remember the RAND Corporation? Remember what they've said recently? Which led the war gaming research. In numerous tabletop war games played over several months between 2014 and 2015, Russian forces were knocking on the doors of the Estonian capital of Tallinn or the Latvian capital of Riga within 36 to 60 hours. U.S. and Baltic troops and American air power proved unable to halt the advance of mechanized Russian units and suffered heavy casualties, the report said. The study argued that NATO has been caught napping by a resurgent and unpredictable Russia, which has begun to boost defense spending. Now, why? Russia spends about $50 to $60 billion. America spends over $1 trillion. And they're talking about $50 to $60 billion. Now, listen, it says, spending after having seized the Crimean Peninsula in Ukraine and intervening in support of pro-Moscow separatists in the eastern Ukraine. Now, let's stop right there. Now, this was before Russia unveiled all of the new weaponry. Now, if that was the case in 2014, because the games were held in 2014, 2015, right? And then when they thought they knew Russia's capabilities, then they said that with under 36 under what is it? Was it 36 hours? Under 36 to 60 hours, Russia would have taken the Latvian capital and the Estonian capital and would have defeated NATO in the eastern flank in under 72 hours. That was before. Now think about the ramifications that this has right now with the unveiling of new ultra weapons that only Russia and China has. America and NATO has nothing, no analog, no likes of it.
That was before the Caliber class missile. When you were talking about that, they didn't know that was happening.
Remember when they shot that? Hold on. You remember when they shot that, when they first demonstrated the power of the Caliber missile from the Caspian Sea, and it forced the United States whole fleet to leave out of the Persian Gulf.
Move out of the Persian Gulf.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Well, now, I was saying, this is way up. The Persian Gulf is way down. Now, the Caspian Sea is bordered by former Soviet republics. It's like an inland sea, and it's bordered by Iran on this end. Now, the place where the U.S. Fleet was stationed is down in the Persian Gulf on the other side of Arabia, by the Strait of Hormuz. And when Russia fired that Caliber missile, because the United States didn't think Russia had cruise missiles that were that fast, that accurate, and that destructive, and had that much range on it. And when Russia demonstrated it, the entire U.S. fleet left within minutes of it being detected in the sky. Man, I tell you what. But they don't tell you this stuff.
Even when they killed General Qasem, they didn't. Iran showed that they have the capability to do this. As what I was ready to say, they will lose against Russia. What you're saying, they didn't have war games against China. They'll lose against China.
26.
They had war,
26 times.
Same thing with even Iran would get in her, but she only thing she can see is like that horse with that blinders on. She can only see one thing to do is cause trouble. She just can't help herself.
Right. But that's the American way. They are aggressive. I'm at your border with a shotgun, and they are preparing themselves because they see somebody on their property line. But the people who are preparing themselves against aggression are the aggressors, and the people who are the aggressors are the pacifists. This is
All of her,
Orwellian.
all of her wars, the terrorists, you and them at people's land. You in their house, and they are the terrorists.
Yeah, yeah. So we're looking at a meltdown of American, and we're looking at, and it's just not in America. This is global. This is global. Let me see. And also, I want to say this to you all: when you go back and look at the chat after the show is over, most time, well, all the time, if there are no comments up there, that's not because we removed them. It's because YouTube did not allow for the comments to stay. I wanted to inform you because somebody emailed sent a message about why were the messages removed. We had nothing to do with it. Absolutely nothing. So we just want to let you know that, okay? So but if you want some of the comments, we try to put it some on the screen or whatever. But let's go to something, because this is laughable. Let's go to this laughable comment by the U.S. Secretary of State. Okay.
The U.S. Secretary of State has been ridiculed after saying big countries shouldn't bully others. Russia's foreign ministry spokeswoman replied with a sarcastic post reminding Anthony Blinken of his own nation's track record.
Viscerally, most Americans don't like to see a big country bullying another, and they just feel it's wrong and want to do something about it. One country just can't attack its neighbor, can't try to seize its land by force, can't try to erase it from the map, can't bully it.
Was it not the U.S. that attacked Iraq? Or is Iraq not a small enough country? Unless I'm mistaken, Blinken represents the USA and not some other country, so the Secretary of State should at least know his own state's history.
In Iraq alone, up to 1.4 million people died due to the consequences of the U.S. invasion, according to one survey. A Chinese foreign ministry spokesperson said on Friday that 37 million people were displaced following the U.S. interventions in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. Since the Second World War, Washington has been militarily involved in conflicts in Asia, Latin America, Yugoslavia, and throughout the Middle East. Almost all of Washington's interventions were justified by defending democracy or fighting terrorism. That's despite the fact most of these conflicts led to political chaos and high civilian casualties in the countries involved. Media and political analyst Lionel told us the current conflict in Ukraine is important for Moscow because of the risk of U.S. military involvement right at Russia's doorstep.
When you consider the fact that there are people who still understand, I think based in some kind of good spirit, that we have to protect individuals from being bullied and being traversed and being manhandled by, I don't think they really understand, number one, the history and how history has shown that, very frankly, we were doing this in the past. In my generation, we remember Vietnam. You can take the same argument exactly. I still don't even know what Iraq had to do with 9/11. We don't know. We're not even sure about Afghanistan. One day, we were out of Afghanistan, like that, and nobody's talked about that. We're not even talking about Libya anymore. We had to go in and we had to take care of Libya because this man was an evil, terrible, despotic, and what about Libya? Who runs it? Is it worse or better since we were involved? We don't know. This is not about being an apologist or looking the other way. This is about the way to handle geopolitical reality today. What would we do? What would any country do if we switched the situation and all of a sudden we had China on the border, let's say, of Texas or Canada? Instead of Canada, it was China. It would be a completely different story. I don't understand how this message, how analogies, and specifically how history isn't remembered.
So I guess they knocked Rashid out of the booth. I see him down in the booth. Again, I'm gonna put him on the screen, but then I wanna just go to something. real quick. I guess they said forget Rashid, get him out of here. They wanted him out of here. Let's go to something real quick. Um,
If they can't kick me off at least 5 or 10 times a show,
it's got to
I'm not
show.
not breathing.
So listen, did you hear the audacity of Anthony Blinken to talk about people don't like big countries bullying little countries? Now, here's something that they refuse to acknowledge. The Iranian parliament has voted multiple times, year after year after year, for U.S. and coalition troops to completely evacuate the country. They have
Iraqi.
ignored
Iraqi. You said
ignored it,
Iranian. You said it's Iraqi.
Iraq, uh, uh, over and over again. Now, this is what the War Secretary, Lloyd Austin, who was a general in the military and also on the board of some of the most powerful weapons makers and manufacturers in the world, Mr. War Secretary Lloyd Austin. This is what he had to say about the situation. Pentagon chief vows to continue U.S. military presence in Iraq. The Pentagon chief on Tuesday made an unannounced visit to Iraq, where he announced Washington's intent to maintain the military presence that began with the U.S. invasion in 2003 and continued for 20 years since, leaving hundreds of thousands of people dead. Now, that comes on the heel of General Miley or Milley, the Joint Chief of Staff, illegally entering the sovereign territory of the Syrian Arab Republic a few days ago and saying that America is not going to leave their illegally occupied areas of Syria or the illegally established and occupied bases that the United States have in Syria. And yet they're talking about that. Or what about in Yemen? Let's go to Yemen. Let's not forget that. America, Israel, and the UK are occupying the Yemeni strategic island. You know why they're doing that? Because their island is not too far from that Chinese base in Djibouti, Africa. So they have armed that, and it's also in all of the strategic waterways. So they have built bases against the people's will in Yemen, and they are occupying that island, turning it into a immovable military base. And they have also taken privilege to go to other resource-rich regions of the nation of Yemen, and they are establishing control over resource-rich areas of Yemen. And yet they're saying this about Russia. The American people hates big bullies who bully small nations. Man, if you don't get out of here, go ahead,
he have not got out of Japan and Germany.
Or South Korea.
America, when she goes into, the only way she comes out is somebody have to get together and throw her out. She has not got out of those countries. You people talk about the Germans will or the Japanese. These are occupied countries. The rulers that's in Germany and Japan are puppets. Period. And they can't do anything. They know better than Zelensky.
Yeah. Continue.
Yeah, they can't do anything without them telling them what to do. These countries are not independent countries. And when that's the reason why America, she's stoking trouble all around the chaos. Remember, there used to be this old television program called Get Smart.
Yeah.
And he was working for control. And the opposite was the chaos. What Maxwell Smart didn't understand was he was working for chaos.
Yeah.
America causes chaos all around the world to stoke troubles so she can rule.
Yeah. And that's what she does. And remember, she can always project The stuff that she does, she puts it on the back of other people and then condemns it as if she's innocent and has no blood on her hands. The UK does the same thing. The Western world, how they try to condemn Russia and China and Iran for investing in Africa, as they're trying to exploit Africa. They're trying to colonize Africa. This coming from colonial nations who colonized in Africa and who
for 500 years.
Listen, who still to this day refuse to leave. You know, I'm gonna tell you something. Macron, the French president, had this to say. I mean, it was so crazy. I couldn't believe he actually said it. He said that France was going to switch out and wasn't going to they weren't going to have a public presence in Africa no more. Guess what they were going to do? They were going to not pull the troops out. They were going to relabel the bases another name. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna pull it up. Hold on one second. I want you to, no lie, I'm gonna pull this up real quick because I want people. Let's see. Let's see if I can do it. Let's see if I can pull this up real quick. Everyone, let's see. Let's see. I want you to see it. Oh yeah, here it is. Man, this is crazy. See, they're in everybody's business trying to control everybody and trying to force everybody to submit to them. Listen to what he says right here. This is an article. And all I put in was France, Africa. That's all I put in the search engine. So for those of you who want to Google it, I put in France, Africa. Because I know some people say, well, I looked for such, I couldn't find it. So I'm giving you something, okay? And then the article is titled, French military bases in Africa will now identify as schools. I'm not lying to you. Listen, let's go a little further. I'm not making this stuff up. Emmanuel Macron wants to rebrand Paris's presence in his former colonies as cultural and economic projects. Since France was dumped by some of its former colonies in Africa in favor of new partners like Russia and China, French President Emmanuel Macron has announced a new plan in an obvious effort to have an excuse to keep hanging out in the hope of winning hearts and minds. How exactly does Macron plan on doing that? The question is asked. Then it says, certainly not by taking people for imbeciles, as he said on February 28th, while announcing his new African strategy ahead of a tour of the continent this week. We aren't going to do, listen to what he says. We aren't, meaning are not, going to do common good. I'm not lying. This is what he says. So this is why I'm reading to you all, because if I said it to you, you wouldn't believe that he said this stuff. We aren't going to do common good, Macron stated, underscoring that France clearly has interests and isn't going to pretend otherwise. After a remark like that, one might be lulled into believing that everything else that he said would be equally straightforward. That's not exactly the case. Rather, Macron is just announcing a different manipulation tactic, because Washington's model of deploying military shock and awe on resource-rich countries in hope of ultimately translating into business deals apparently isn't getting the job done. Even worse, the West is now worried about being outdone on the security and economic front by Russia and China. And for all the patronizing attempts to warn African countries to avoid dealing with them, most recently by Western officials at the Munich Security Conference, it turns out that treating African leaders like they don't know what's in their own best interest isn't working either. The big question in the wake of Mali giving the boot to France's year-long counterterrorism mission, leading to an exit of the country's armed forces from the region, was how Paris would justify sticking around, just like America, just like England, just like the rest of the European countries. Let's go further. It says, in 2021, there were over 19,000 deaths related to Islamist violence, even though the Western world created those people, armed them, trained them, right? And then after arming, training, financing them, and giving them specific jobs to do, telling them when you do this, say Allahu Akbar. And then when they do that, they play up to the media, and then the media say, these are Islamists, these are extremists. Even though it's, you know, that it's the West that's arming, training them. The Christian West is arming, training, financing, and giving these people cover, and you're going to label them Islamic extremism, Islamic extremists. The detachment from reality. But let's go further. It says, when Boko Haram was at its strongest in the Sahel, the region that France ostensibly sought to stabilize. So France was fired. For all of its time in the region, Paris wasn't able to parlay its security footprint into the kind of economic and resource deals that it wanted on behalf of both itself and resource-poor Europe. Macron tipped his hat early in the speech by evoking that France of the financial community, the franc of the financial community of Africa as a sort of anchor for the Franco-African cooperation that he's introducing. Stop right there. Now, I want to show you this. In former British colonies, Britain still retains some level of influence and rulership over their former colonies. That's why you see most colonies with Elizabeth's picture on their currency, or Elizabeth addressed as the head of state of these so-called sovereign nations. And to maintain Britain's rule over these former colonies, they have something called the British Commonwealth, which is an assortment of former colonized nations that look to now so-called King Charles as the head of these things. This still gives Britain.
Hold on a minute.
This still gives Britain influence. This still gives influence to empower and projection of power to Britain. Well, the same goes for France. Do you know the French does not even use the franc anymore? But they've imposed the franc, which was a currency of France, on its former colonies. So they get a payment of the economies of those countries, and they can exercise undue influence over the domestic and international policies of their former colonies. Do you know that? And most people don't know this. Canada has bases in Africa. You didn't know that, did you? Germany has bases in Africa. Italy has bases in Africa. How is it that European nations are asking Russia to pull out of a European country when they refuse to pull out of African countries? When they refuse to pull out of South American, the Latin countries? When they refuse to pull out of some of the territories that they've held over 100 years in Asia? Why is it that it is unconscionable for someone to occupy a European country, but it's just everyday run-of-the-mill for Europe to maintain bases in Africa? If you leave these people alone, they'll leave you alone. The influx of refugees into Europe, the big issue in Europe, is because of European colonial policy. How in the hell can you bomb nations, destabilize nations, overthrow governments, assassinate leaders, right? And then bomb the one African nation that was the most prosperous nation on the Mediterranean. Listen to what I just said. The one nation in Africa that was the most prosperous nation on the Mediterranean. And you know European nations reside on the Mediterranean. But it was an African nation that was more prosperous than all of it. They bombed it into the Stone Age. That was Libya. Took the resources, $300 billion in gold and silver, $300 billion in currency reserves. The West did that. But there was no outrage and no sanctions on France, which initiated it under the auspice of American leadership. There was no sanctions on the U.S., Italy, and all of the NATO countries who took part in the pillaging of Libya, the balkanizing of Libya, the robbing of Libya of its gold and independence and its central bank and its resources, and the sodomization of the leader of Libya and the destruction of the institutions which held that nation together. When are they going to be accountable? There should be an international court in Africa to hold them accountable.
Because the people of that country, those countries, got a different skin, so that makes it, well, we can do it to them because they really ain't people. But if you do it to the garden, then the whole entire world must be up in an uproar. Even what you were saying before about Boko Haram and all that. Remember, the Wahhabi brand of Islam
that comes from the UK,
straight out of England.
Yeah,
that's right. Comes straight out of there.
Yeah. Oh, for those of you in England,
put
hold on one second. Let me, because we got England, we got a large audience of the English here. Let me tell you something. When you hear the government talk about the corruption of the Wahhabis and the fanaticism of Wahhabism, and they talk about the House of Saud, you have your government to thank for it, because they were the ones who took those bandits out of the desert and put them, they were robbers, rapers, and bandits in the deserts. And the British, the French, and the US took them, they offered them a deal and made them the head of Arabia. That's why I often say, if you look in history, there's no book written that is called Lawrence of Saudi Arabia. It is Lawrence of Arabia, because prior to the imposition of the House of Saud on Arabia, right, it was not called Saudi Arabia. It was the Brits who took the lead in that. Go ahead.
You said what I was going to say. That even this Wahhabism guy back in the 1700s, he was pushed by England. That brand of twisted Islam comes straight out of England. But you got to give the English or the British, you got to give them their props. How better to destroy something from within? Push a twisted form of Islam to be pushed around the world, and then you are the ones that benefit for it. Remember, that little country over there in the Palestine, these Saudis have not thrown one rock at it.
Yeah.
Not even a little pebble.
Right. Right.
Because they work for America and England.
Right. Now,
they know better than any other Boko Haram or whatever, the jihadis. He's sitting on the throne of Arabia.
And we must remember also that all of these fiefdoms and kingdoms that sprouted up in the Middle East and all these nations, these were countries partitioned by France, Britain, and the United States. There was
I got to take this.
Okay, go ahead, take it. There was no United Arab Emirates. There was none of this stuff. The British, the French, and the Americans are responsible for the balkanization. When you look at Syria, Lebanon, and all of that, it was the French who balkanized that area up. When you look at the Ottoman Empire, it was the West that took that and redistributed the land and called these people this and called these people that. It was the West that did that. This is historic. So you can go into history and see these things in one hand, because listen, the reason we bring these points to light on this platform is because no one else is saying ostrich, right? Issues. Now, think about this. I want you about this. Let's get this. And let's be real with this. That is unstabilized. Yeah, I got you. I took you off mute. Oh, wait, it went back on mute. It went back on mute. I took him off mute. Okay, but anyway, let's look at the situation that's destabilizing the Middle East, and it's the cause of so much suffering. the occupation of Palestine. Now I want you to forget your allegiances to your country for a minute. I want you to forget your allegiance to your religion for a minute and your perception of what things are. Let's go to reality, okay? 80 to 90% of the people in Palestine who call themselves Jews did not come from that area. They did not come from that area. A lot of them came from Europe. Listen to me good. From an area they used to call the Empire of the Khazars or something like that. Now, let us look at this. This is historic, okay? You can go to any history book, look this stuff up. I'm not making this stuff up. I'm not bashing anybody's religion, ethnicity, or none of that. I'm pointing out facts, okay? Most of these people are from Europe. Now, let us not even go back too far in time. Let's go back to Germany. And most people say that Hitler was Jewish, right? You have a lot of people who have done study that says that Hitler was Jewish and a lot of his commanding officers were Jewish. I'm just putting this out there. Go look this up. I know YouTube may suspect, but they're not. I mean, we're not bashing Jews. We're not bashing Judaism. What we're doing is walking down the line of history, okay? Now, let's just throw out that and say, forget that Hitler wasn't a Jew. His leadership weren't Jews. Now, but let's go to the fact and say, well, Germany is responsible for the displacement and the cruel treatment of the Jews, right? Now, if that is the case, and we have historical proof, and everybody pretty much agrees that that some of that took place, then why did the Palestinians have to pay the price for Germany?
They should have took the Germans' land instead of the Palestinians' land.
And why did they deport? I mean, well, they gave en masse. They took, and England was the head of this. Now, listen to me good, because England was responsible for Palestine. England was.
After the Ottoman Empire fell.
England was responsible for the upkeep of Palestine. They allowed the influx of Khazaris to Palestine. They did that. And now you have a Middle East that is unstable and that continues to cost the lives of so many people in multiple war after war after war to maintain Israel, which was based on a Palestinian foundation. Is it the Palestinians' fault? No. If the Jewish people from Europe said that they were mistreated, then who mistreated them? It was Germany. So they should have took Germany and made it into Israel and not Palestine. You understand? But what do we know? We only use common sense in history.
As I said before, chaos. That's how he rules, through chaos. He did the same thing with England. I mean, with India, with Kashmir. Same thing. Stir up trouble. Here you got a Muslim region ruled by a Hindu. He did that. And they've been warring ever since. Through chaos.
Yeah.
That's how he rules.
Hey, one of our guests in the chat does not like to be called British. He does not like to be called British. He says he's English. He's England. He's from England, not Britain.
Well, it didn't say.
Some of them don't want. Some of them don't like that, and I understand. I do understand some of them. Oh man.
But the British Empire or the English Empire has been the cause of a lot of trouble around the world. Murder, rape. Right. Listen, once you take somebody's life, they can never get it back.
Right.
Once you steal somebody's land and rape and pillage their people, you are the fault of these people. You are the cause of this. And once again, we go back to the scriptures that they claim. What is supposed to happen when somebody goes and enslaves a man, rapes, robs, and kills a man, and builds his house on a bloody foundation? What's supposed to happen to him?
Right.
What is supposed to happen to that man? He's supposed to be removed. We're taught that democracy means demon rule, or the rule of demons. Mm-hmm. And then he taken this democracy and take it all around the world and justify his evil rule.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm listening to you. I'm scanning the news and I'm trying to do the chat and everything else at one time. Now, we're about to close out. We're going to have a show tomorrow if they allow us back. If they allow us back on YouTube. If not, we'll be streaming over on for sure on Rumble. So join us tomorrow as we go out. In closing, we'd like to thank you for giving us your time and for the communication back and forth with the chat. We really appreciate your thoughts because we're not confrontational. What we like to do is give facts. And sometimes people can get in their feelings when facts are against them. So we don't take it to heart. We just know some people just don't know certain things. That's why we try to bring it to light. Rashid, in closing, what have you to say to the people who are listening?
As you just said, remember, truth hurts the guilty. Right. If someone gets upset with the truth, we ain't got nothing to say about that.
In closing, join us at the same bat time, the same bat station tomorrow morning as we stream for Truth and Life, and bring some people and tell people about the show because we're being artificially suppressed. Not going on me like that. You're not getting me like that. I'm coming back. YouTube just did that. I didn't do that. So we're not off the air yet. You're not getting me like that. And I gotta always say what I have to say when I go off. I can't leave this out, so I'm coming back. So in closing, please remember that your time is precious. We view your time as precious. So we hope that we gave you an equal or greater exchange for your time, because you can never get your time back. On that note, we love you, but always remember that God will always love you better. And if you seek truth, truth will make a way for you. We go out the same way we came in, with love for God and love for truth. And we say, Mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Deuces, everybody.